I don't know, is it because we're fuzzy, or sometimes we're not clear, or we're just too, utopic in our opinions? I don't know what the stigma is, but it's wrong. It's wrong, completely wrong.
Yeah, because it seems to me that art teachers would be the ones. I know a lot of times people, when they think about the teachers that they enjoyed the most, it's usually somebody that was involved in those creative fields. It might be an art teacher in grade school that really got them to think in a unique way, or also a lot of things along that line. Now, I will say that the one thing that I didn't enjoy as much was kind of those art history classes, because there's so many dates and things of that nature that you have to remember styles and of art, whether it's the kind that Picasso was known for, or whether it's something that like Van Gogh was known for. And it's all that memorization of dates and everything that I don't consider myself the greatest person in. So those kind of classes, I was not the biggest fan of, just because of the trying to remember those dates and trying to remember exactly when the time frames were.
That's fair enough. That's understandable. I mean, you just want to have fun and play and experiment and, learn about new things when you're in the art room. And I think that's fair enough. That's okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have that kind of attitude. I was going to share something with you that you might enjoy, talking about the way you were with your sibling and everything when y'all were both young. But I'm in my late 50s. My brother just turned 50. But when he was a young kid, I was probably a preteen, and he was maybe 3 or 4. I am not the best cook in the world. I mean, I will admit the things that I'm not good at. I mean, I'll probably go out to fast food way too much and everything. But my younger brother, Malik, is a pretty good cook and a pretty good experimental cook. Part of the reason he's a good experimental cook is because when he was, like I said, maybe about 3 or 4, I don't remember the exact date, but he was definitely a young man. He saw the cookbook, and the cookbook was on a high shelf. He knew that he could not reach the cookbook. So he asked me to reach the cookbook and read the instructions to him. So I read the instructions to him. He cooked. So I think my parents, when they came home, were shocked when they found like a couple of cooking dishes, because I had grabbed that cookbook, read the cookbook to him, and like I said, he fixed some dishes. He sometimes teases me even about the radio station, because like I mentioned earlier, my parents started a radio station in the late 70s, like around 76, until it was on until about 86. So it was during my teenage and young adult years in the 20s. And at that time, he did a lot of the construction. So he was more of a hands-on kind of person, kind of shows how art plays roles in people. So they had found an old abandoned building. I think it was a former doctor's office, or maybe it was a dentist. But they converted that building into the radio station. And he did a lot of the building, the sawing, the hammering and stuff as a young man, a young kid. I avoided that like the plague. After the station was on the air and I realized that I had a decent voice and liked to talk to people and liked to socialize and stuff like that, I did more of what people might call the star role. And he would sometimes, even to this day, tease me and be like, yeah, you might have been involved with the station. You might have got some stardom out of the station and everything. But at the end of the day, I helped build it.
Absolutely. Yes, you do. Absolutely. It takes a village to grow a child, doesn't it? And I think that's the whole kind of thing. So, yeah.
No matter what it is, it does take a village to grow it. What are some of the things that you see? We've talked about the standardized testing and how that's the same. But what are some of the things that you see that are maybe a little bit better or worse in the UK than the United States? Because you did come here to visit, you've talked to people online and everything, and you've probably heard from people from around the world. So what are some of the things that you're seeing that the UK model may be better than the US model? I know a lot of times, like you used earlier, the UK and US model are very similar in the sense of standardized tests and things of that nature. But I also imagine there are some things that y'all may be doing better than we're doing. And I was just wondering if you had a perception as to what some of those things might be.
It's really difficult because we're very, very, very tiny, and you guys are huge. You've got a massive country there. But I think 2 areas that I thought are really important to kind of to reach out and talk here is number one, teacher training, so professional development, so how teachers are trained. But it's not just the fact that that's it, you're trained, you're done, finished, but it's ongoing. So I think in this country, in the UK, we do invest a lot in teacher training, making sure they're up to date with the new qualifications. We believe that just because you're graduated as a teacher doesn't mean and that's it. You're still kind of on a learning journey throughout your whole life. I think that's quite strong in the UK, I'd like to think. And the other thing I think it's what I've noticed is a huge difference is the inequality and probably just the poverty. So you've got schools in very deprived areas, you know, which are struggling to keep teachers, which, you know, they're quite dangerous and they're quite harsh. And it's just the inequality there of money, and you know, why is there such an inequality there? And I know that they happen all over, they exist all over the world, but it's, you know, I would like to think again with my fluffy, my utopic hat, but how can we make sure that education is the same quality for absolutely every single child on the planet, regardless of where they are, what country they live in, you know, whether they've got access to good internet or not, but it should be the same quality, right?
Yeah, I would think so. I think it should be the same in quality, and we don't have enough of that. I agree with you that we need to find better quality. And you mentioned earlier about how sometimes, even with what you're trying to do with your art teaching, and this has been a concern with people here in the States, is not everybody has a laptop or the phone access or the computer access. So trying to find a way that you can still engage them, because I know I'm actually part of a fellowship where we're going to do some census stuff and some other issues around a part of Durham, which is the part of North Carolina. I live Durham, North Carolina, but we're going to do like a study of this particular neighborhood. And part of the problem we're having is not everybody has access to the kind of tools that we're using now because of COVID in order for us to have this conversation. I mean, a lot of this neighborhood has got elderly citizens and others that aren't necessarily using the internet. So we're trying to figure out unique ways, whether it's reaching out to church email lists or whatever, that we can engage the population so they can tell us kind of like what they would see their neighborhood become, what they would like their neighborhood to look like, whether that's in education, whether that's in whatever the other concerns that they have, like housing and things of that nature. But we are finding that it's a new era, like you said, and we're trying to find ways to reach out to the population that doesn't have the standard tools of the laptop or the cell phone, or that might have a data plan or things of that nature, but how to reach these folks. So how have you managed to do that even with what you're doing? Because I do know, from what I do know of the UK does have some issues like we do around some race equality issues, at least they did in the past, as well as equality issues around just class and poor versus rich folks. So some of these folks may not have those same kind of equipment, whether they're coming from whether they're native to London or whether they're coming from some of the African nations or some of the other parts of the world. So when you have students that are from different places that don't have this access, what kind of tools and things are you coming up with as a way to reach out to them, not being able to go see them? So I'm just wondering what kind of ways you're addressing these.
It's interesting because you know, we've got lots of vulnerable lists in school anyway, so we know the students whose family are on very low income. So they're before we had the virus, we know that those students who we call people premium students, they would be students that we would always track and identify, so we know about them. However, our school, although I'm not in my school building, we have got everyone working still. So not just the teachers working, but the support staff. So the pastoral liaisons, the mentors, the counsellors, they're still working. So these are the teachers or the colleagues who are still calling up every child to say, how are you doing? Have you got a resource? Have you been able to access online learning? If not, okay, when can you? Or right, if not, then we're going to organise for a laptop to be sent to your house. So the government now have actually acknowledged the fact that not every child has got a laptop, not every child has got access to Wi-Fi. So for a certain year group, and this is the year group that's next year will be taking their finals, their GCSEs, they've said to let us know who hasn't, and they're going to be able to provide a laptop for them. Because in my community, it is one of the highest deprived communities in the whole of the country. I think we're second in terms of deprivation. And the lowest earners is where my borough is, and where, you know, our children they've got the best intention of wanting to kind of be present during their lessons, but they can't because they can't access the education, they can't access a device, and maybe their brother who's older is using or has priority on the device, or maybe they're trying to access it through their dad's mobile phone, where their dad needs their mobile phone to work. So this inequality is becoming desperate, especially during COVID. But another thing we've done is we've literally just bought lots of exercise books, so study books, and we've shipped them to everyone's home. So if we know that a family, we've just said, look, do you have tools? Do you have pencils? What is it you need? And the parents have been very honest and say, look, we've run out of paper, or the students have been saying to their pastoral managers, I've run out of, I've got no more paper, miss, I've got no more paper, so I've used all my exercise books. So as a school, we're like, right, what can we do? Let's respond. So we've ordered lots of packs of books, of exercise books, and we're going to leave them in the school. We'll arrange for the students to come one by one, invite them in to come and collect, take them home to do their work. And luckily, where I live, oh sorry, not where I live. Actually, I do feel like I live in my school. But where my school is, most of our students, they either walk to school or they get the local bus, and so it's easy for them to access. So if we do say to them come, then they will come, and so that's the good thing about it. So sometimes it's not about the devices. Kids, like younger kids especially, they like working in exercise books. They like working in, this is what they're used to. Right. And so that kind of change of habit for them, going online automatically, it's been huge for them. So again, it's you, as a school, you've got to constantly review. So okay, we've done that, what next? Okay, that's not working right, let's see, what can we do now? Okay, what can we do now? And that's why I said, Marty, I've never worked so hard in my entire life. During these last few weeks, your brain keeps on going. How can I make this better? How can I improve? How can I make them more engaged? How can I get them motivated? How can I keep them motivated? What do they have at home? What can we get them? And that's the conversation that I think every teacher is having in their head at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's the conversation that people are having around the world and everything.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You're right. Just out of curiosity, just to veer a little bit away from the teacher, but I will come back to that. Do you think is the biggest stereotype people have of, and I'm assuming you're a native of the UK, but what is the biggest stereotype people have of the UK? Because I know when I think of the UK, a lot of people, they automatically go back to Diana and that whole royal weddings and all of that. And of course, now they go back to the newest princess and everything. So everybody's all caught up in the royal environment of London. And I do know that there are some disparities just from having been a student of history of everything. But what are some of the things that you wish people knew more about London, and what are some of the stereotypes of just the UK in general that you think folks have?
How it's like most cities, the fact that you've got very rich affluent areas, but around it you've got very poor areas. It's a very multicultural community, and that's a great thing. It's lovely being that rich and diverse. Even on my road where my school is, we've got 2 churches in a space of about a mile or mile, 2 churches, 1 temple, 1 mosque. That's how close we are in terms of proximity. Every type of food you can think of, there's restaurants. It's a bit like New York City, but probably not that tall, as it were. All right, I can't not say I've met the royal family, because I have, but only because I won the award. That's it. But that's not real. That's not real UK. That's not real London. Real London is a cosmopolitan. It's got its huge areas of privations. It's got its gangs. It's got its crime. It's got its pockets of lovely migrant communities. It's diverse. It's loud. It's colourful, and I love it.
Okay, so you love being there, and like I said, so you were born there in the UK. Now, were you born in the part that you teach at, or were you born in another part? Because I know there are different districts. Of course, everybody knows.
That's right. So no, I was born more in the centre in town, so nearer the centre of town. I was born in a small town, called, actually it's quite famous now, called Camden Town, which is probably about half an hour's drive from where I live now, so slightly more on the outskirts of London.
Okay, so, and folks definitely, and if somebody was, whenever the virus abates, and hopefully people will get to doing more world travel. I know that that's one of the things I have not done enough of. I don't know whether coming to the United States was your first time getting out of the world, but I mentioned earlier that my dad was stationed in the Air Force when I was born. So 6 months later or thereabouts, I was shipped off there with my, shipped off to Turkey with my mom. So mom had a little infant child because I wasn't, my brother wasn't born yet. So there was the 2 of us that met dad, and I stayed there for 2.5 years. And up until maybe about 2 years ago, I hadn't done any world travel.